My name is Evelyn Hartman, and I thought I knew everything about my husband, Thomas. After 47 years of marriage, you'd think there'd be no secrets left between two people who'd shared everything: dreams, children, laughter, and even the silence of aging together. But that morning, standing in front of his casket, surrounded by strangers, I realized I'd been living beside a man who was part mystery. The church smelled faintly of lilies, the kind Thomas hated because they reminded him of hospitals. The pews were filled, but I didn't recognize half the faces. They whispered quietly, glancing toward me like I was an outsider at my own husband's funeral. My daughter, Lillian, sat beside me, holding my trembling hand, while my son-in-law Ethan Clark kept a respectful distance, trying to keep the order of the service. I had spent the night before looking through old photo albums, searching for peace in familiar memories. Thomas with his fishing hat, Thomas at our wedding, Thomas holding Lily as a baby. I found comfort in those moments until I opened a drawer in his study and found an envelope marked, "For Evelyn if I'm gone." But I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not yet. The pastor's voice echoed softly through the church. Thomas was a man of strength and generosity. He touched many lives. I smiled weakly. That sounded right. Thomas had always been kind, helpful, though sometimes distant in ways I couldn't name. But when the pastor asked if anyone wished to share a few words, something shifted. From the back pew, a young woman stood up. She looked no older than 30, her auburn hair falling in waves over her shoulders. Her dress was black but elegant, and her eyes, those eyes, were the same piercing gray as Thomas's. "I'd like to say something," she said, her voice trembling but strong enough to carry across the church. Everyone turned. Even the pastor looked uncertain. She walked to the front, stopping beside Thomas's casket. I could feel my pulse quicken, my fingers gripping the edge of the pew. "My name is Naomi Clark," she said softly, glancing at me for a moment before turning back to the crowd. "And Thomas Hartman was my father." The room went silent. The words struck me like a gust of cold wind. My father. Lily gasped beside me, her nails digging into my palm. Ethan looked stunned, his mouth half open, as if unsure whether to intervene. Naomi continued, tears welling in her eyes. "I never knew him well,
but he used to write to me.
Letters I'll treasure for the rest of my life." "Letters?" I felt the room spin slightly. I stared at the casket, at the man I'd spent nearly 5 decades beside. He had never once mentioned a Naomi. Never a daughter besides Lily. The pastor cleared his throat awkwardly. "Thank you, Miss Clark." But she didn't move. She placed a trembling hand on Thomas's coffin. "He told me he was sorry. That one day, he'd make things right." I couldn't breathe. Sorry for what? When the service ended, the church emptied slowly, murmurs buzzing through the air like bees. I remained seated, frozen, my eyes locked on the spot where Naomi had stood. Lily finally spoke. "Mom, do you know her?" I shook my head numbly.
"No."
"I've never seen her before in my life." Ethan stepped forward cautiously. "Maybe it's a mistake. Some kind of misunderstanding." But deep inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: doubt. A quiet, creeping fear that maybe the man I'd loved had hidden a part of himself I was never meant to see. Outside the church, the afternoon sun was blinding. Naomi stood near the steps, surrounded by a few people offering condolences. When she caught my eye, she walked toward me. "Mrs. Hartman?" she asked gently. I could barely nod. "I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I just thought it was time." "Time for what?" I managed to whisper. She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, aged and yellowed at the corners. "He told me this belonged to you." My fingers shook as I took it. The handwriting was unmistakable, Thomas's neat, deliberate script. Naomi's eyes softened. "He wanted you to know the truth." And with that, she walked away. Lily stared after her. "Mom, what truth? What's in that envelope?" I turned the letter over in my hands. "I don't know, sweetheart. But I did know one thing. My world, the one Thomas and I had built so carefully, had just begun to crack." That night, after everyone had left, I sat in our bedroom alone. The room smelled faintly of his cologne, still lingering on the pillow. I finally opened the envelope from Naomi. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. My name at the top. Evelyn, there are things I should have told you long ago. Things I was too much of a coward to face. I stopped reading. The words blurred through my tears. I couldn't go on. I closed the letter and stared out the window at the stars. Thomas, I whispered. What did you do? A knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Lily, standing in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. Mom, are you okay? I forced a smile. Just tired, honey. She nodded and hugged me tightly. We'll get through this together. As she left, I glanced at Thomas's photo on the nightstand. That familiar smile, the one I once thought held no secrets. But now I knew better. And as I placed the letter back into the envelope, something slipped out, a small, faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. The woman was Thomas's first wife. But the baby looked nothing like Lily. My breath caught in my throat. The letter wasn't the only secret he'd left behind. Sometimes, the ones we trust most are the ones who hide the deepest truths. But even the darkest secrets have a way of finding light. Stay with me. The truth Thomas left behind is only beginning to unfold. I didn't sleep that night. The letter from Thomas lay on the nightstand like a ghost I couldn't ignore. Every time I closed my eyes, his handwriting came back to me. That calm, steady script that used to bring me comfort. Now, it felt like it was written by a stranger. By morning, the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest. Lily had gone home with Ethan after insisting I rest, but I couldn't. My mind was spinning with questions. Who was Naomi really? And what did Thomas mean when he said he'd been too much of a coward to face something? The photograph I'd found with the letter was still in my hand. The young woman in it had kind eyes, familiar somehow, holding a baby no older than a few months. I turned the photo over. On the back, written faintly in pencil, were 3 words. For my daughter. My daughter. My heart sank. Was Naomi really his? I forced myself to open the letter again, reading further this time, even as my hands trembled. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I've carried this secret for too long, and I owe you the truth. Before you, there was someone else. Her name was Marjorie, and, together, we had a daughter. But things ended badly. I tried to make it right, but I failed her. Failed them both. I pressed the page against my chest, the words burning into me. Thomas had a wife before me, or maybe not a wife, maybe something else. But a daughter? All these years, and he never said a word. I was young and foolish, Evelyn. When I met you, I wanted to be a better man. I thought I could bury the past. But blood doesn't stay buried. I don't expect forgiveness. Just understanding. I let out a long, shaky breath. Understanding? After 47 years of trust, laughter, and memories, he wanted me to understand that he had another child? The tears came, hot and uncontrollable. You lied to me, Thomas, I whispered. You looked me in the eyes every day and lied. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but when I woke up, the sun had already set. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from Lily. Lily, Mom, are you okay? Please call me. I've been thinking about that woman all day. Ethan says maybe she's scamming us. For a moment, I wanted to believe that. Maybe Naomi was lying, trying to get money, attention, something. But deep down, I knew. The resemblance, the letter, the photo, it was too much. I decided to find her. The next morning, I dressed slowly, my hands steady though my heart was not. I found Naomi's name online easily enough. Naomi Clark, 32, freelance photographer, living just 2 towns over. Her address was listed in the local directory. When I arrived, her house was small but charming, tucked behind a line of maple trees. I hesitated at the door, then knocked softly. It opened a moment later, and there she was, the same gray eyes, the same startled expression I must have had at her age. Mrs. Hartman, she said quietly. I wasn't expecting you. I needed to talk, I replied. She nodded and stepped aside.
Come in.
Her living room was filled with photographs, families, children, landscapes. On the mantel sat a framed picture of a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark hair, smiling with his arm around her. "Your husband?" I asked. She shook her head. "My brother, Matthew. He passed away 5 years ago." There was pain in her voice, the kind that only someone who's lost too much can carry. I sat down, clutching my purse. "Naomi?" I read the letter. She looked down, twisting her fingers. "I thought you might. Tell me the truth," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "Was Thomas really your father?" She took a long breath. "Yes." The word fell between us like a stone. "I didn't know until I was 18, she continued. "My mother told me on her deathbed. She said his name was Thomas Hartman, that he'd once promised to take care of us, but never came back. I found him years later. I wrote him letters, sometimes he'd write back. He said he wanted to meet, but he was afraid it would hurt you." I swallowed hard. Hurt me? I spent my life thinking we were honest with each other. And he was writing to another daughter behind my back. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "He didn't want to destroy what he had with you. He told me you were kind, that you made him a better man. He didn't lie because he didn't care, Mrs. Hartman. He lied because he couldn't bear to lose you." Her words stung, but there was truth in them. Thomas had always been the kind to protect others, even from himself. Still, it didn't make the betrayal easier. "Why did you come to the funeral?" I asked softly. She hesitated. "Because I never got to say goodbye. He died before I could tell him I forgave him." I looked around the room again. On the table was a small box. Naomi followed my gaze and picked it up carefully. "He left this with me," she said. "Said it was for you when the time was right." She handed it to me. It was old and wooden, with the initials TH carved into the lid. My heart pounded as I lifted it open. Inside were a few things: a gold bracelet I hadn't seen in decades, a folded note, and a photograph, me and Thomas, on our wedding day. I frowned. "Why would he give this to you?" Naomi shook her head. "He didn't. He just said one day I'd know when to return it." The note inside wasn't from him, it was from someone else. The handwriting was elegant, looping. I read it aloud. "Thomas, I forgive you. But some truths never die quietly. If she ever learns, tell her it wasn't all a lie. We were real, once." I felt the blood drain from my face.
He whispered.
"Marjorie." Naomi looked confused. "My mother?" "Yes," I said quietly. "She signed it with just an M." The room suddenly felt cold. I looked at Naomi again, really looked, the shape of her jaw, her hands, the tilt of her head. I saw Thomas in all of it. "You are his daughter," I murmured. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I stood up, unsure what to do, what to feel. Rage, sorrow, confusion. All of it fought inside me. "I need time," I whispered.
She didn't stop me as I left.
Outside, the sky had turned gray. I walked to my car, clutching the box like it might shatter. But as I reached for the door handle, something caught my eye, a small photo tucked under the wiper blade. I pulled it out, confused. It was another photograph, this time of Thomas, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, holding a little girl. Naomi, maybe 4 years old. On the back, in his handwriting, were the words, "She deserves to know." I looked around, heart racing. Who put it there? Naomi couldn't have. She was still inside. I slid into the driver's seat, my mind spinning. If Thomas had kept these secrets, what else was he hiding? When I got home, the house felt different, heavier, like it was filled with echoes. I sat at his old desk and began opening drawers I hadn't touched in years. Receipts, notes, business cards, and then, tucked beneath an old ledger, another envelope. This one wasn't addressed to me. It was labeled Naomi, in case I can't find you. I stared at it, my heart in my throat. Why had he kept a letter for her and never sent it? The seal was still unbroken. I hesitated, then opened it, feeling both guilt and desperate need. My dearest Naomi, I have wanted to tell you everything. But the truth is more complicated than I've ever let on. There are people who might hurt you if they knew who you really are. That's why I stayed away. Not because I didn't love you, but because I couldn't protect you and Evelyn at the same time. Please forgive me. And if anything happens to me, don't trust Ethan Clark. My breath caught. Ethan, my son-in-law. I read it again, my hands shaking. Don't trust Ethan Clark. Why would Thomas write that? Ethan had been nothing but kind. He'd helped run Thomas's company after his health declined. He'd been there for Lily, for all of us. I looked at the signature again. It was undeniably Thomas's handwriting. For the first time, I realized my husband's secrets weren't just about love or betrayal. There was something bigger, darker. Something that might not have died with him. Sometimes the truth we think we want becomes the truth we can't bear. But I couldn't stop now, not after reading Thomas's last warning. Stay with me because what I discovered next would change everything I thought I knew about my family. The night I found Thomas's second letter, I've barely slept. His words, "Don't trust Ethan Clark," echoed in my head like a drumbeat. I kept turning them over, trying to make sense of them. Ethan, my son-in-law, the man who carried Thomas's coffin, who comforted my daughter, who smiled as though he had nothing to hide. Why would Thomas warn me against him? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded before me, staring at Thomas's signature. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone and called Lily. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, you sound off. Are you okay?" "I need to see you," I said quietly. "And Ethan too. It's about your father." She hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "I'll explain when you get here." An hour later, they arrived. Lily looked worried, her blonde hair tied back, eyes red from crying. Ethan followed behind her, carrying his usual calm. Too calm, maybe. I noticed things I hadn't before. The quick glance he gave me when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his jaw tightened when he saw the papers on the table.
I didn't waste time.
I handed him the letter. Thomas wrote this before he died. Ethan unfolded it, reading silently. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes flicked up once. Sharp, calculating. "This is absurd," he said finally, forcing a laugh. "You really think your husband was in his right mind when he wrote that?"
He was sick, Evelyn. Confused.
Lily looked between us, panicked. "What's going on? Why would Dad tell you not to trust Ethan?" "I don't know yet," I said, watching Ethan closely. "But I plan to find out." Ethan sighed and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Evelyn, I've been taking care of the company, the estate, everything. If I wanted to hurt you or Lily, don't you think I would have done it by now?" His tone was calm, reasonable, but there was something cold in it. "Maybe you already have," I said quietly. He stared at me for a long moment before walking out of the kitchen. Lily followed him, trying to calm him down, but I sat there, staring at the letter. My gut told me something was deeply wrong. Later that afternoon, I called Naomi. I didn't know why, maybe because she was the only one outside the family who might see things clearly. When she answered, her voice was cautious. "Mrs. Hartman? I need your help," I said. "Do you know anything about a man named Ethan Clark?" There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, "Yes. He contacted me once." My stomach tightened. "When?" "A year ago," she said. "He said he worked for your husband's company. He wanted to know if I was really who I said I was." It felt off, like he was digging for something. "What did he ask you?" She hesitated. "He asked if my mother ever mentioned any documents from Thomas." I told him no. He didn't believe me. I froze. Documents? After hanging up, I went straight to Thomas's old office, a place I hadn't entered since the funeral. The smell of his cologne lingered faintly. The books were still neatly arranged, his chair still slightly turned toward the window. I began searching. Drawer after drawer, nothing but business papers and old receipts. Then, in the bottom of a filing cabinet, I found a hidden compartment. Inside was a sealed envelope marked confidential. Inside were legal papers, company documents, letters, and a signed statement with Thomas's signature at the bottom. The header read, Transfer of Ownership, Hartman Logistics and Company. It was dated 2 years before his death. The signature next to his wasn't Ethan's, it was Naomi's. My heart stopped. Why would Thomas transfer his company's shares to Naomi? I sat back in shock, the room spinning around me. That's why Ethan was involved. He wasn't protecting the company, he was trying to take it back. I barely heard the door open behind me. Mom, Lily's voice. What are you doing in here? I turned, clutching the papers. Did you know about this? She looked confused. About what? Your father signed over half the company to Naomi Clark, I said. Did Ethan tell you that? Her eyes widened. No, he said everything stayed with the family. Naomi is family, I whispered. Lily shook her head, tears filling her eyes.
No.
That can't be right. Ethan handles all the legal stuff. He said Dad's estate was settled months ago. Then he's been lying, I said. Thomas trusted Naomi more than he trusted his own son-in-law. Lily covered her mouth. Oh my God. The front door opened downstairs. Ethan's voice carried through the hall. Lily? Evelyn. I quickly stuffed the documents into my sweater pocket. My heart pounded as he came up the stairs. When he entered the study, his smile was polite, but his eyes weren't. They flicked to my hand, to the drawer I'd left slightly open. What are you doing up here? He asked lightly. Going through Thomas's things, I said. He nodded, stepping closer. That's good. You'll want to get everything in order soon. I forced a small smile. I suppose you're right. But when he turned to leave, I caught something in his expression, a flicker of fear. He knew I'd found something. That night, I called Naomi again. Meet me tomorrow at the old chapel near Oakwood Cemetery. I told her. I need to show you something. And bring anything you have from your father, letters, papers, whatever you can find. She agreed. But when I arrived the next morning, the chapel doors were open and Naomi wasn't there. Her car was parked outside. I stepped inside, calling her name. Naomi. My voice echoed off the wooden walls. On the altar, a single envelope rested under a stone paperweight. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was addressed to me, in Naomi's handwriting. Mrs. Hartman, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. Someone followed me here. I think Ethan knows about the papers. Please don't come looking for me until you know you're safe. I gasped, scanning the empty chapel. My heart thudded. She'd been here. She'd known she was being watched. I drove straight home, panic rising in my throat. When I got there, Lily was on the porch, tears in her eyes. Mom, she cried, Ethan's gone. He left early this morning, didn't say where. He took his laptop and briefcase. My blood ran cold. He's after her, I said.
What?
Why? Because she's the heir to half the company and probably whatever else Thomas left behind. Lily's eyes widened in horror. You think he'd hurt her? I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure anymore. That night I couldn't eat, couldn't think. The wind outside howled against the windows, and the house creaked like it was alive. I sat in the dark, clutching the old wooden box Thomas had left behind. For years I thought it held memories, but maybe it held clues. I opened it again and dug through its contents. The old photo, the bracelet, and then something I hadn't noticed before, a tiny, hidden latch inside the lid. When I pressed it, a false bottom popped open. Inside was a small flash drive. I froze. Thomas was old-fashioned. He wrote letters, not emails. Why would he hide something digital? I plugged it into my computer and a single file appeared. Truth and P4. My hands shook as I clicked play. The video opened with Thomas sitting at his desk, the same office I'd just searched. His voice was calm, but grave. If you're watching this, Evelyn, it means you've found the others. I didn't tell you everything, because I wanted to protect you. Ethan Clark is not who he says he is. He's not just your son-in-law. He's connected to the same people who tried to ruin Hartman Logistics 30 years ago. He married Lily to gain control. Naomi's share threatens that plan. If he finds out she's alive, he won't stop. I covered my mouth, a cry escaping my throat. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner, Thomas continued. I thought I could fix it before it reached you. I was wrong. Protect Naomi. Protect Lily. And Evelyn, forgive me for leaving you with this burden. The video ended. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. My husband's secrets, his warnings, his guilt. All of it made sense now. Ethan wasn't just deceitful. He was dangerous. And Naomi, she was in danger because of me. I grabbed my phone and dialed Naomi's number again. Straight to voicemail. Then a new message popped up. No name, just an unknown number. You should have stayed out of this. The blood drained from my face. And that was when I heard it. A soft knock at the front door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I turned toward it, every nerve in my body alive with fear. You think the dead take their secrets with them, but sometimes they leave them behind like landmines. I thought I'd lost my husband once. Now I was losing my grip on everything he left behind. Stay with me, because what happened after that knock shattered everything I thought I knew about truth and loyalty. The knock at the door felt like thunder in my chest. 3 slow taps, too deliberate to be random. I froze where I stood, the glow of Thomas's last video still flickering on the screen behind me. For a long second, I didn't breathe. Then I whispered to myself, "You've come this far, Evelyn. Don't stop now." I moved toward the door, my hand trembling on the knob. I opened it a few inches and gasped. Naomi stood there, her face pale, eyes wide, hair damp from rain. "Mrs. Hartman," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. I didn't know where else to go. I pulled her inside and locked the door. "My God, Naomi, are you hurt?" She shook her head, catching her breath. "No, but someone's been following me. A car, black, no plates. Every time I look in the mirror, it's there." "It's Ethan," I said, voice shaking. "Thomas warned me. He said Ethan would come for you." Naomi looked stunned. "Then he really did know everything?" I nodded. "He recorded a video, told me Ethan married Lily to control the company." Naomi sank into a chair, tears brimming in her eyes. "He tried to contact me months ago. Said he wanted to meet, to talk about our father's legacy. I thought he wanted peace. But then I started getting threats." I felt a surge of anger, cold and sharp. For years, I'd lived in the comfort of trust, never questioning my husband, my daughter's marriage, or the world we'd built. But now I saw it all, the quiet manipulation, the charm, the lies that slithered into every part of our lives. "I'm done hiding," I said finally. "We're taking this to the police." Naomi shook her head quickly.
You don't understand.
"Ethan's connected. He has people in law enforcement in the company. If we go to the wrong person, he'll know before we even finish filing a report. Then we'll find someone we can trust." Her voice trembled. "I don't know who that is anymore." I thought for a moment, then remembered the one name Thomas mentioned in his will. A man I hadn't seen since my husband's retirement party, Detective Miles Rowan, a quiet man with kind eyes who used to work with Thomas on company security cases. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I found in Thomas's old address book. After a few rings, a gravelly voice answered. "Rowan. Detective Rowan, this is Evelyn Hartman. You worked with my husband, Thomas. I need your help. It's urgent." There was a pause. "Mrs. Hartman, I've been expecting your call." My heart skipped. "Expecting it?" "Thomas came to me a month before he died," he said. "Said if anything happened to him, you'd be the one to reach out." I closed my eyes, tears filling them. Even in death, Thomas had been preparing me for this moment. Within an hour, Rowan arrived, tall, gray-haired, still wearing the old leather jacket I remembered. He greeted me gently, then turned to Naomi. "You must be Naomi," he said. "Your father spoke of you." Her eyes widened. "You knew?" He nodded. "I helped Thomas verify everything, the DNA, the old adoption records. He wanted to make things right with you before it was too late." I felt my throat tighten. "He never told me." Rowan gave a small, sad smile. "He wanted to, Mrs. Hartman, but he didn't want you to carry that pain." Then his tone turned serious. "Ethan Clarke's been on my radar for a while. He's been laundering money through shell companies, using Hartman Logistics as a cover. Your husband found out, and that's why he transferred shares to Naomi. It was his way of protecting her and the company from Ethan's takeover. Naomi's eyes went wide. So, he knew Ethan was stealing from him? Rowan nodded. He confronted Ethan once. After that, Thomas's health started declining faster than expected. I don't believe in coincidences. A cold chill ran through me. You think Ethan? Rowan cut me off softly. Let's just say his hands aren't clean. I sank into a chair, the room spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about my life, was crumbling. Rowan leaned forward. Mrs. Hartman, Naomi, I need both of you to stay quiet for now. I've set a trap, a financial trace, through one of Ethan's fake companies. We just need him to take the bait. Naomi looked scared. What if he finds out first? He won't, Rowan said firmly. But if he does, call me immediately. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. Every car passing outside felt like a threat. Around midnight, I went downstairs for water and stopped. The study door was open. I was sure I'd closed it earlier. I stepped inside cautiously. Papers were scattered on the desk, the same ones I'd hidden in the false drawer. My pulse raced as I looked around. Then I noticed the window. It was unlocked. He'd been here. I grabbed my phone and called Rowan, whispering what I saw. I'll send a patrol car, he said. Stay with Naomi. Don't leave the house. The following morning, Rowan came back. We found tire tracks outside, he said. Looks like someone was watching from the woods behind her property. Naomi looked pale. We can't keep waiting for him to strike. We need to end this. Rowan nodded slowly. Agreed. That's why we're staging a meeting. A meeting? I asked. Tomorrow afternoon. You'll both meet Ethan at the company office. He'll think you're coming to sign over the remaining assets. We'll be wired, and officers will be in place. If he admits to the fraud, or worse, we'll have him. The next day, I dressed carefully, Thomas's old brooch pinned to my collar, like armor. Naomi and I rode together in silence, both gripping the folder Rowan had prepared. When we arrived at the glass-walled conference room of Hartman Logistics, Ethan was already there, standing by the window, looking every bit the charming businessman. He turned, smiling. Evelyn.
Naomi.
I wasn't sure you'd come. I forced a polite smile. We're just here to settle things. Of course, he said, motioning for us to sit. Let's make this simple. He slid papers across the table, contracts, all neatly printed. If you sign these, Naomi relinquishes her claim, and the estate is finally closed. Naomi looked at me, then back at him. You mean if I give you everything? He smirked. Call it what you like. I could feel the small microphone hidden under my collar, Rowan's plan playing out. Ethan leaned forward. You know, Naomi, your father was a sentimental fool. He thought he could protect everyone. But he forgot, loyalty doesn't keep the lights on. Neither does greed, I said quietly. He glanced at me. You've always underestimated me, Evelyn. But your husband didn't. He knew I'd do whatever it took to keep this company alive.
Alive.
I whispered. Or yours? His smile faded. Sometimes they're the same thing. Naomi's hands clenched. You poisoned him, didn't you? Ethan's eyes went dark. Careful, Naomi. You don't want to make accusations you can't prove. Then prove me wrong, she snapped. Why did his health collapse right after your business dinner? Why did you burn all the financial files from that month? He laughed softly. You're smarter than you look. That was all Rowan needed. The door burst open, and officers swarmed in. Ethan stood up, stunned, as they cuffed him. Rowan stepped forward. Ethan Clark, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Ethan glared at me. You think you've won? Thomas wasn't the saint you think he was. Rowan pulled him toward the door, but his words lingered. Naomi turned to me, trembling. Do you think he's telling the truth? I looked at her, at the daughter I'd just found, at the ghost of my husband that hung between us, and whispered, We'll find out soon enough. That night, as the house finally fell silent, I stood by Thomas's grave in the backyard garden. The moonlight fell over the stone, the wind gentle through the trees. "Thomas," I whispered, "I did what you couldn't. It's over now. Almost. Almost." Because Ethan's last words still echoed in my mind. Thomas wasn't the saint you think he was. And deep down, I knew there was still something left unsaid. Something hidden in the shadows of a past I hadn't fully uncovered yet. When the storm finally passed, silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like memory, heavy, echoing, and alive. For days after Ethan's arrest, I wandered the house as if it were a museum of ghosts. Every framed photo, every half-read book, every chair Thomas once occupied seemed to breathe with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Naomi stayed with me. Sometimes she would sit by the window in the kitchen, sipping coffee and staring into the fog-covered garden where Thomas's grave lay. We didn't talk much at first. There was too much between us, truth and pain, guilt and inheritance, the kind of silence that can only exist between people bound by blood and broken promises. But time, I've learned, has a way of softening even the sharpest truths. It was a week later when Detective Rowan visited. His voice was steady, but his eyes told me there was still something left unfinished. "Mrs. Hartman," he said, taking off his hat, "we've confirmed Ethan's charges, the fraud, the forged documents, the manipulation. But there's one more thing you should know." I gripped the edge of the table. "What is it, Miles?" He hesitated. "We ran new tests on Thomas's toxicology report. It's what you asked for, remember?" My heart thudded. And Rowan sighed. There were traces of digoxin, a heart medication, in his bloodstream, but not enough to suggest foul play. In fact, he took extra doses himself, likely to ease his chest pain. His death, it wasn't murder, Evelyn. It was mercy. For a long time, I just sat there, silent, letting the words settle. Relief and sorrow collided inside me, like light and shadow embracing at sunset. "So," I whispered, "Thomas knew he was dying." Rowan nodded. "And he chose to control how it ended. He wanted to protect you and Naomi from what was coming. He didn't want Ethan to destroy everything he built." I closed my eyes. "Thomas, you fool. You carried it all alone." Naomi reached over, touching my hand gently. "He wasn't a perfect man," she said softly. "But he loved you, Evelyn. And he loved me, even if he didn't know how to show it." Her voice cracked. "I used to resent him for not finding me sooner. But now I think maybe he was trying to make sure I had something worth finding." Her words pierced something deep in me. All those years I'd spent believing my life was whole, when in truth, it was missing a daughter I never knew existed. Yet here she was, not a replacement for what I'd lost, but an unexpected piece of what I never knew I needed. I reached across the table and pulled her hand into mine. "Naomi, if Thomas taught us anything, it's that love isn't always neat or on time. Sometimes it arrives late, bruised, confused, but real nonetheless." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and I saw Thomas's eyes in her, that same quiet kindness. We spent the following days going through Thomas's study together. It felt sacred, almost like touching his thoughts. Naomi found a hidden box inside his desk drawer. Inside it lay a bundle of old letters, tied with blue ribbon, and a small silver locket. I untied the ribbon, hands shaking. The first letter was addressed to me. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you in person. There are some mistakes in life that words can't fix, only love can. Naomi is mine, but she is not my shame. She is the proof that I once lost myself before I found you. I tried to protect you from this truth, not because I doubted your heart, but because I feared breaking it. Forgive me for keeping her away. I only wanted to make sure she was safe. You've been the best part of my life. Whatever happens after I'm gone, please remember this. You are my home. Forever yours, Thomas." I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears come. Naomi read the last few lines silently, then looked up at me. "He really did love you." I smiled through the tears. "And he loved you too, in his own clumsy, secret way." The silver locket inside the box had a small picture of Thomas holding a baby, Naomi. On the back, engraved in faint letters, were 3 words: "For both of you."
I don't know how long I cried that day.
Maybe hours. Maybe a lifetime. But something shifted in me afterward, a quiet forgiveness. Not the kind that erases pain, but the kind that transforms it. A few weeks later, Naomi and I went to visit the company office. The board had decided to rename the foundation Thomas started for community education programs. It would now bear both their names, the Hartman and Cole Legacy Fund. When the ceremony ended, Naomi turned to me. "Do you think he'd be proud of us?" I smiled faintly. "I think he's finally at peace." The months that followed were slow but healing. Naomi moved into the guest house by the garden. We cooked together, laughed, and sometimes argued about the smallest things, but it felt real, like family. The first real family I'd had in years. Sometimes I'd catch her in the study, reading Thomas's old journals aloud, as if trying to know him beyond the man he was to me. And every time, I'd stand at the doorway and listen to the echoes of a past that had finally learned to breathe again. One evening, as autumn began to paint the trees gold, Naomi and I sat by the fireplace. The air was quiet except for the crackle of wood. She said softly, "Evelyn, do you ever wish you'd never found out?" I thought about it. All the pain, the betrayal, the unraveling of a life I thought was perfect. She smiled gently. "You really are the strongest woman I've ever met." I laughed. "Oh no, darling. I'm just too old to run from ghosts anymore." That night, after Naomi went to bed, I stepped outside. The sky was a sea of stars, the kind Thomas used to love watching with me. I walked to his grave, placed the silver locket on the stone, and whispered, "Rest now, Thomas. Your secrets found their way home." The wind picked up softly, brushing through the tall grass, almost like a sigh of relief. I looked toward the house, warm light spilling from the windows, where laughter and life still lived. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. Grief doesn't end when justice is served. It ends when love outlasts it. I turned to leave, my heart lighter than it had been in years. As I reached the porch, I glanced back once more and said, "We're okay now, Thomas. You can stop watching over us." Then I smiled, not with sorrow, but with peace. Because sometimes the greatest ending isn't revenge or revelation. It's forgiveness. And as the dawn began to break behind the hills, I whispered the final truth of my story, the one I wished someone had told me long ago. Love doesn't die with the body. It lives on, in the ones brave enough to forgive.